Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, donde quiera que esté. Mi nombre es John Levy. Vamos a reaccionar, de hecho, vamos a reaccionar a una reacción ya hecha de Jordan Peterson, porque a mí me agrada en sentido general. Vamos a bajar esta luz, está muy alta, se me quema la piel. Miren, ustedes ven cómo se ve eso. Eso cuando la luz está demasiado alta, tiene que ser algo 46. Ahí creo que está bien. Ahí. Se ve bien aquí. Se ve bien de perfil, ahí. Nítido. Nitit, como dice un pana mío. Nítido. Medio complejo toda esta vaina, pero bien. Entonces, vamos a hablar un poquito, vamos a reaccionar un poquito a Jordan Peterson conmigo, que es más que nada un activista, podríamos decir que de derechas, conservador. Y en la caja de comentarios, no lo he visto el video, pero por lo regular las cosas que te dice son sumamente interesantes, así que vamos a hacer una pequeña reacción y me gustaría que en los comentarios me vayas acompañando a lo que este tiene que decir. Realmente este desmantela a las feministas. Ustedes saben que aquí le damos durísimo a las feministas y me encanta ver este tipo de intercambio porque incluso son ideas que uno puede interiorizar para luego utilizarla en cualquier debate. Así que, nada, vamos a darle. Para los que no saben inglés, va a haber subtítulos en pantalla y recuerde suscribirse al canal de Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews.
Guest of the day, the other one today, is a man you may recognize, or maybe you don't. Jordan Peterson has achieved that rare feat, becoming a global superstar academic. So how did he become so well known? He first came to national prominence in Canada in 2016 in a debate about new laws on gender identity. Bill C-16 made it an offence to refuse to call someone by their chosen gender pronoun. Jordan Peterson argued that this would infringe free speech, while some supporters of the bill said he was advocating prejudice. From there, his YouTube star took off, and he has now over 1 million subscribers. And his videos, where he talks everything from identity politics, which we've touched on, to the Bible, to Disney movies, have been viewed over 150 million times. Gosh, that's about the same number of views we have on this programme. Last year, he supported ex-Google employee James Damore, who had been fired for suggesting men and women have different interests due to biological differences. And his latest book, 12 Rules for Life, has taken him on a global tour, promoting his ideas. And just this week, he sold out the 1,000-seater Emmanuel Centre around the corner here in Westminster. So, Jordan, you've done endless interviews. You've been publicising your book, and they've generated plenty of heated debate.
And I actually sold out the Apollo. It had 5,000 seats.
All right, stop boasting.
Talk your shit,
do you
Jordan.
think, though, because of the heat that has been generated, that your views have been
No
misrepresented?
me menosprecia al hombre. Dile los 5,000 asientos que vendió.
Times.
Oh, definitely, but that's part and parcel of the process. I did take a very forceful stance, let's say, against some of the excesses of the radical left-wingers, and it's in their best interest to paint me as somehow a figure of the extreme right, because then I don't have to be contended with. But, I mean, it's easy for people's views to be oversimplified in a very large public debate.
I mean, in terms of some of the issues, I mean, you say you've been painted as an extreme right-winger.
No, some people have tried that. Not very successful, but they've tried it.
And you came to prominence in part over your...
Sí, porque ese es el problema de la izquierda. Si tú no eres liberal, o sea, progre, tú eres obligatoriamente ultraderechista, peor que el tipo pintor de Alemania, el del bolsito aquí. Tú eres peor que ese. Realmente él era austríaco, pero ya ustedes saben de qué estamos hablando, que no se puede mencionar aquí porque ustedes saben lo que le hacen en los videos.
Opposition to this law that we just talked about in Canada, proposing the use of preferred pronouns for transgender people. Just for clarity,
mandating them.
Yeah.
Right.
Saying that you should do it.
No, that you had to do it.
Right, you had to do it by law. But just for clarity, do you think a trans woman is a real woman?
I don't really like the way those questions are formulated. I don't know what that means. What do you mean a real woman?
Well, I'm asking you, in your mind, it depends what you think a real woman is, but do you think a trans woman is a woman?
This would have been a perfect opportunity for Jordan to ask her, well, what's your definition of what a real woman is? Let's go.
No.
Why not?
Because I think that women are capable, generally speaking, of having babies, and they have female genitalia, and they have an XX chromosome, and I think the biological markers are relevant. It doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think that people should be treated with respect and dignity if they happen not to fit easily into a gender category.
Y ahí es que realmente nosotros no estamos de acuerdo, porque yo puedo diferenciar. Yo puedo decir que yo no estoy de acuerdo con que tú te autoidentifiques como una mujer porque cromosoma XX, aparatos reproductores, nacer con ustedes saben, no con un pene, con una vagina. Pero fuera de eso, respeto el hecho de que tú de manera particular te quieras identificar como una mujer. Ya eso es una decisión tuya que hay que respetarla.
That's a different issue.
Right.
But it's a matter of definition.
Yes.
And I actually think it's a foolish argument in some sense. Because what do you mean by real?
Well, I mean, you've just clarified that, though. You don't think that a trans woman is a woman. And do you think that that is what is behind or explains your opposition to this idea of a law mandating you to use a preferred pronoun, is because you don't actually believe that that's the truth, that a trans woman is a woman and therefore you can't use that pronoun?
No, that's not my argument at
Really?
all. Yeah, really. My argument is that the government shouldn't compel voluntary speech.
No, but I know what your argument is. And
No,
you've
but
made
that's
it very
really
clearly.
it.
But
But that's exactly it. There's
the
no
motivation
There's no
behind
motivation behind it.
But you don't believe
I wouldn't
a trans
put
woman is a
everything
woman.
online in my life to take the stance I did unless I had thought that through very deeply. And I've thought it through very deeply. There aren't hidden motivations that have to do with some arbitrary prejudice against trans people.
Okay.
It's pure and simply this. There's never been a time in English common law history where the government compelled speech, and the Canadian government dared to do that, and that was unacceptable. And they masked it with this show of compassion for the oppressed, and I don't buy it.
Right, but you would.
You ask him a baited question, then you refuse to let him answer until he took over the conversation. You're not letting him finish what his argument is and concluding for him what you think his argument should be.
As I think you said, at an individual level, if somebody asked you, somebody asked you to use a particular pronoun, you would do so.
Well, I have.
You have?
Yes.
Right, fine.
Yes.
Let's talk about feminism. Are you a feminist?
No, not as it's currently defined, certainly not.
No. Well, in any other definition?
Well, I think that anybody who doesn't think that the competitive landscape should be opened up for equality of opportunity is not thinking. And so everyone's interests are better served if people have as equal access to opportunity to display their talents and to manifest their talents in the world as possible. So in that sense, certainly. But feminism now, and this is why it's so deeply unpopular, a very small minority of women in the UK identify as feminists. And the reason for that is it's primarily become an ideological weapon. And it's an ideology that I detest, actually, the ideology that it's...
Y se ha hablado mucho de eso, de que esta ola del feminismo, porque ese otro punto que no te definen los feminismos, no hay un solo feminismo. Esta es la tercera, creo que la cuarta ola del feminismo. Pero la primera ola del feminismo reivindicaba cosas que todos podemos estar de acuerdo con ella, que era el derecho al voto, el derecho a trabajo, tratar de regular el pago que se le hacía a las mujeres conjuntamente con el hombre, que hoy día todavía se está luchando por eso, pero que no con los mismos parámetros que se hacían entonces. Eso era en ese entonces. Ahora lo que se está tratando de hacer a través del feminismo es utilizarlo como una herramienta para darle privilegio a una parte de la ciudadanía en detrimento de la otra parte. Eso ya no se llama de derechos, eso se llama privilegios. Y eso es precisamente lo que el movimiento feminista está buscando hoy día. No solamente en los Estados Unidos, sino en el mundo. Privilegio para una parte de la ciudadanía sobre la otra.
Associated with collectivist ideology.
Right. I mean, okay, and that's your view about feminism. Are you a feminist?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a very proud feminist. And when I was a special advisor in government, I worked on women and equality issues. And I'm very proud, actually, of a piece of legislation I got on the statute book with my former boss, Harriet Harman, the Equality Act in 2010, which strengthened our anti-discrimination laws. And I fought very hard to get more women into public life, into the Labour Party. And I'm very, very proud of being a feminist, hence my pink dress.
Oh, well, all right.
Step into Wix Studio, where creative freedom meets absolute efficiency.
Right, obviously reverting to type then.
Absolutely, well.
You would like men to regain or reclaim their strength physically, mentally and morally. Is that broadly correct?
I would say morally, fundamentally, but I think the other things go along with that.
Right, and if that
But it isn't men precisely who I'm speaking to. It's people. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm actually interested in individuals, and I'm interested in their fortification against tragedy. You know, every time I do an interview, the interview is always political. It's always political.
Well, the clue is in the title of this program. We are the Daily Politics.
No, fair enough. Look, fair enough. And I'm not casting aspersions at this program, but the fundamental news that's important about what I'm doing isn't the political element. And the people who talk to me don't talk politically. They say they've watched my lectures.
But part of it is that I think for a lot of people the kind of personal does become the political.
Or the political becomes the personal.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the...
Yeah, but in this situation, a lot of people are wrong, because primarily what's happening is people are are watching my lectures, and as a consequence, their lives are improving dramatically.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure people are have had a huge conversion after, and they're much happier once they've been.
It's not a conversion.
But what I would like to do is kind of almost, I think at the moment the discussion about feminism is very divisive, and sometimes it can sort of be like, okay, men have to lose and women have to gain. Actually, everybody has a lot to gain by greater equality. Now, whether you get the equality of outcome that you want, I think only time will tell. But certainly, equality of opportunity is very important. And actually, a lot of men would benefit from that. So I think a lot of men are having a lot of crises at the moment in terms of mental health, suicide issues, their own sense of identity, because I think some of the stereotypes put on men are quite limiting for them as well. I think they make men quite unhappy as well.
The devil's in the details with regards to equality, because I'm an advocate of equality of opportunity. But I think the idea outcomes, that's an appalling doctrine.
Why?
All right,
because you have to produce an unbelievably potent bureaucracy to make the ever greater and ever finer distinctions that are necessary to enforce equality of outcome. How many group differences are you going to equalize across? Is it just gender and sex? How many genders?
No, so
gender and ethnicity? How many genders?
I think
how many ethnicities? How many races?
We'll let Aisha answer.
I think what people are trying to do with this, and certainly as somebody who has sought to sort of do this myself, I think you set yourself ambitions for what you would like to see, and then you try and remove as many of the structural barriers and obstacles. So you try and create that fair crack of the whip and that equality of opportunity to see where you get to with the outcomes.
That's
now,
fine.
We are in very early stages. It's only 100 years since women got the vote in this country. We have had a long established patriarchal society and set up for a long time in the world in this country. So I think we have a long way to go to see where it plays out. There is no country in the world where we really do have gender equality properly yet in terms of real decision making and real
Some of the
power.
Scandinavian countries, maybe?
They're still not quite there, and I think you've spoken a lot about this. There's still a way to go in Scandinavia. Things are not perfect in Scandinavia.
I haven't spoken about that specifically. I've spoken about.
You spoke about the right stuff yesterday. You talked about the Scandinavian.
Well, I've spoken about the fact that, see, one of the things that's happened in the analysis of the differences between men and women is that the social constructionist claim is that the differences are socially constructed, right? Is that it's a consequence of environment that men and women differ. But what the scientific literature indicates is that as cultures become more egalitarian, like they have in Scandinavia, the differences between men and women actually increase rather than decreasing, which is a direct...
Boom. Boom. Y eso es un hecho.
Repost to the social constructionist view. So they just deny all that. The biggest differences in the world in interest and temperament are between Scandinavian men and women. It's exactly the opposite of what everyone predicted.
I wanted to let that section play because I wanted to show how Jordan Peterson brilliantly and calmly dismantled these two feminists. If you learn nothing from this conversation, at least take away this. Equality of opportunity is the measure of how equal our chances of success are, whereas the equality of outcome is just a measure of what the results of a situation are. To break that into simpler terms or an example, let's say that you have an organization that's looking to hire. If they're looking for diverse hires, but they're hiring with the mindset of equality of opportunity, that means that they're trying to find a diverse set of applicants, thereby giving everyone a chance at the job. However, if they're hiring with the mindset of equality of outcome, regardless of how well the applicants do or their chance of success is, at the end of the day, the results is they're looking for this amount of black people, this amount of Latino people, this amount of white people. So essentially with equality of outcome, you have a quota. And in a fiercely competitive capitalistic society, you do not want a quota based off of some ill-fated characteristic that some government entity tells you or instructs your business to hire by. Because
y eso está demostrado que no funciona. Porque, por ejemplo, eso es lo que se ha tratado de hacer desde Disney. Y todos estamos de acuerdo que Disney ahora mismo se ha vuelto una basura, específicamente porque han querido buscar esa igualdad, empujar esa agenda, meterte el progresismo por boca y nariz, y eso es lo que ha llevado a que pierdan millones y millones de dólares. Tanto que estrellas que antes se pronunciaban abiertamente de que el feminismo, que aquello, que lo otro, que son moralmente superiores según ellos, hoy están reduciendo ese speech, y hoy Disney está despidiendo a miles y miles, a cientos y cientos de productores, de staff, etcétera, 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 porque se dieron cuenta que esa igualdad que ellos estaban buscando a través de forzar una agenda contra gente tradicionalmente conservadora o que gente que ni siquiera participa en el tema político, no funciona. Esa igualdad forzada no funciona. La igualdad tiene que partir en el ámbito por lo menos laboral de la competencia que tienen las personas. Profesional, personal, académicas, etcétera, 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 en el ámbito del trabajo. Contratamos un grupo de personas, 10 y 10, y los más aptos, los que demuestren tener una entrega más por el trabajo y que resulta que son los más competitivos, pues al final esa es la gente que debería quedarse con el trabajo. No, ay, porque yo soy de izquierda, ay, porque yo soy liberal, ay, porque yo soy LGBT. Incluso hay candidatos en México, por ejemplo, recientemente hubo un tipo, qué pena que no guardé el tweet, que su única característica para él competir a la posición era que él pertenecía a la comunidad LGTB. Y ya vemos muchísimos trabajos, donde está Twitter, debería estar aquí. Ya hay muchísimos trabajos donde la característica principal es que la gente dice o da de notar que tiene para que los contraten es específicamente, yo pertenezco a la comunidad. Yo le voy a poner un ejemplo de lo que es ser delusional. Como actuar como si fuéramos unos niños, como si fuéramos alguien que no tenemos sentido común. Vamos a ver cómo con una simple pregunta esta gente se rompe a llorar. Y esta es la misma gente con problemas emocionales muchas veces, que quiere ir a un lugar de trabajo a competir en el mercado laboral actual y que quiere que tú hagas un enforcement, o sea, que tú los apoyes en su decisión de vivir una vida, como se dice, de no vivir en la realidad, de no afrontar su realidad, e incluso utilizan términos que ni siquiera saben, porque precisamente eso es lo que hacen las agendas. Te dicen cosas, te hacen hablar de cosas que tú ni siquiera sabes de lo que estás hablando. ¿Y cómo le demuestro? Vamos a ver este video.
Okay, you guys are all just like really misogynistic.
How do you define misogyny?
Chequen. Miren.
What? I'm just asking how you define misogyny.
Él le hizo una pregunta. Él solamente le preguntó. Él no la atacó de manera personal. Él no lo ofendió. Él no se paró y le dio una galleta. No. Ustedes son misoginios. Ok. ¿Y cómo tú defines la misoginia? Esta es la respuesta de ella. Es una persona que claramente necesita ayuda. Esa jovencita claramente necesita ayuda de un psiquiatra, de un terapeuta. Porque no puede ser que un adulto, por una pregunta sencilla, se ponga a llorar. Esa es la gente que luego quiere ir a competir a un trabajo contra una persona emocionalmente estable, por ejemplo, como yo, que las palabras no me ofenden, o sea, el mundo, yo no interiorizo la cosa personalmente, o contigo, y que es la gente que te hago una pregunta, si tú tienes una empresa que tú quieres, una persona que trabaje duro, que ponga las metas de la empresa como su propia meta, que trabaje por eso y que no se desmoralice por un comentario que alguien pueda decir. Imagínate esa muchacha trabajando en un call center, por ejemplo, o en cualquier servicio al cliente. Se pega un tiro.
Can I go?
Are you okay? Like, do you want to go as in leave? If you want to leave, you can leave. I was hoping we could continue having a conversation, but
una locura. Y esos son los estereotipos que el feminismo quiere empoderar.
Then you're going to have people in roles that are not qualified for those roles simply because they met a quota. To put it into even more simpler terms, masculine men ride for equality of opportunity because if we're not the best person for the job, then we don't get the job, and we take accountability for that, and we get bigger, better, faster, stronger through that.
Punto. Si tú no estás capacitado para un trabajo emocional, físicamente, educadamente, pues no te dan el trabajo, punto. De eso se trata el mercado, de eso se trata el capitalismo, no de un patriarcado, no de un machismo. No, es que el mercado es eso. Si yo pongo una empresa, invierto dinero, invierto capital, yo quiero que el material humano, los recursos humanos que tenga esa empresa tenga la mejor preparación y que yo vaya a recuperar la inversión que yo hice en mi negocio. Capitalismo, punto. El mercado es eso. La vida no se trata de los sentimientos de las personas. No, la vida se trata de trabajar y obtener resultados, punto. Nada más. La vida se trata de eso. No de feminismo, de patriarcal, de izquierda. No. Hechos, facts, punto. Es de noche, de día, de día. Está lloviendo, está lloviendo. La naturaleza en sí tampoco anda con medias tintas. Si es gris, si es blanco, punto. Así debería ser.
Failure. Weak men or feminists want to ride for this equality of outcome because at the end of the day, we must all feel included, which I think is a load of bullshit. Lego.
I just pick up on one thing you said a little earlier in the interview, which you said it's the moral guidance that you are focused on. You think that is particularly important. How do you square that with the behaviour of perhaps arguably, you know, a prominent alpha male president of the United States, Donald Trump, when his behaviour, I mean, he is accused of having an affair with a porn star when his wife was pregnant. How does that fit with morally reclaiming
Well, I would say that was rather clearly immoral.
Right.
Yeah,
but you would
not
still
to be a target for emulation.
But you still would have voted for him over Hillary Clinton as identity politics. I mean, it's just how
none of that was on the table. And I said I might have voted for him on a whim. That's all.
But you also did say you started out feeling quite close to Hillary Clinton. Can I just come out on the
very quickly, because we've got to move on.
In a way, I don't care what Trump does in terms of his private life, but what I don't have is him stopping or potentially stopping other women having agency over their reproductive rights and lots of men taking those decisions.
It's all about where the moral outrage lies and what's more morally outrageous in people's eyes. Is it his behaviour or the identity politics for you on the... Anyway, we'll have to discuss this another time.
Just think about the pure ridiculousness of these media outlets to throw out such a wild allegation. This guy, Trump, has been accused of all of these wild alpha male, cheated on his wife. What do you think about that? Well, you must think this way because you talk so positively of him and you said that you wanted to vote for him before. So you must ride for things like that, right? Right? Meanwhile, never giving Jordan Peterson the opportunity to be able to answer.
Uno de los problemas que tiene la izquierda precisamente es que, como han dicho candidatos, para tú ser de izquierda, por ejemplo, tú tienes que tener un paquete completo, que si tú no apoyas ese paquete completo, entonces tú no eres de izquierda. Y ellos entienden que precisamente el que esté en la derecha o el que es conservador hace exactamente lo mismo. No. Yo puedo estar con un candidato y apoyarle en ciertas cosas y en otras cosas no, porque no se trata de un movimiento del Ku Klux Klan que nosotros tenemos. No, son ideas. Y eso que hace esa entrevistadora precisamente es lo que tratan ellos de hacer en muchos debates y en muchas entrevistas. O como Donald Trump es una persona que incita a que las personas se tiren de un puente y él es candidato a la presidencia y tú estás votando por él, entonces eso implica que tú apoyas que la persona también se tiren de un puente. No, porque yo estoy apoyando a ese candidato no por lo que él haga en su vida privada, en su vida personal, sino porque lo que él podría representar como presidente o como senador o como diputado. Porque si a eso vamos, hay muchísimas alegaciones de Hillary Clinton con unos emails que se filtraron, etcétera, 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 o lo que pasó con su esposo, Bill Clinton. Y aún así fue presidente y fue reelecto presidente de los Estados Unidos. Entonces la izquierda hace mucho eso. Como él hace tal cosa, pues entonces tú apoyas eso y tú eres también así por extensión. No necesariamente. Y encima no lo deja responder a la pregunta porque tú me invitas a tu programa, me haces una pregunta y no me dejas responder. Coño, ¿para qué tú me estás invitando?
And ending the program before he can clear his damn name. Conversations like this demonstrate why decentralized media platforms such as YouTube has grown to the extent of what they have over the past several years. These people sit in their fancy studios in their big squishy purple chairs and they dictate what they want to do to you through their producers, their directors, their screenwriters, and the agenda that they want to push. But shout out for Jordan Peterson for holding his stoic frame throughout this conversation, thus demonstrating through that frame clarity and precision so that his arguments are not misconstrued. What I admire so much about Jordan Peterson is that whether you see him in a classroom, tutoring students, or you see him out on these different platforms getting berated by these people with clearly opposing views, he always maintains himself. Undoubtedly, these types of conversation, as well as his schedule at the time that he was most popular, had an adverse effect on his mental health and his mental well-being, which in my opinion culminated to his addiction that happened years later. But nevertheless, this demonstrates why this guy is so popular, because while the world is clowning nature, saying so much on mainstream media of the complete opposite of normalcy, he can just calmly talk through it and out-logic your bull. Questions, comments,
A mí eso precisamente me gusta eso de Peterson y trato de seguir su trabajo precisamente por eso. ¿Por qué? Porque en las discusiones se busca eso realmente. En las discusiones literarias, en las discusiones de esta naturaleza hoy día, se busca precisamente hacer ataques personales contra la otra persona, tratar de sacarlo de su centro para que tú no puedas hacer una declaración correcta o atacar un punto en específico. Entonces, personas expositores como Jordan Peterson son importantes porque es gente que muy calmado, muy centrado, responde todas las preguntas y no se deja provocar. Y eso es importante. Entonces, todos los que están ahí afuera, que están en la batalla cultural, que apoyan este tipo de contenido, te invito a que te suscribas, compartes y den like. Debes recordar siempre que cuando estás teniendo un debate, cuando estás teniendo con una discusión con alguien, siempre mantén la calma. Mantén la calma y ve a los hechos. Y esa es una de las grandes cosas que tenemos la gente que somos conservadores, que estamos en la derecha, que atacamos hechos, hablamos de datos. Y para eso debes mantener la calma y no dejarte llevar a una discusión emocional, como vimos en el video de esa jovencita, de esta gente que es sumamente emocional. Pero nada, no hay tiempo para más. Muchísimas gracias por suscribirte, llegar al final de este contenido. Gracias. Ya somos 6,000 suscriptores en este canal. Lo agradezco bastante. Estamos trabajando mucho para ustedes. Gracias por el apoyo. Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, donde quiera que esté. Un abrazo grande y hasta pronto.